My name is Nadia Kidwai. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to ask my panelists to come and join me. So can I invite Diane Hodgins up from Shorefast Foundation? She's come all the way from Newfoundland, so thank you. Big round of applause. I'd like to invite Beatrice Alain from the Chantier de l'économie sociale from Montreal. Welcome.
Bienvenue.
Could I invite Fred Khonje from Affinity Credit Union in Saskatoon? Fred, come on up.
De Saskatoon.
And finally, Wayne Chiu from Trico Homes from right here in Calgary. Wayne, let's be friends.
Wayne Chiu.
We are going to try and make this as lively and as dynamic as possible. And we really do invite you all to send me your questions and comments during the course of this conversation. You don't have to wait till the end. A couple of things we want you to think about as you're listening to our panelists. What really resonates with you? We're in a room full of experts because you are all experts in your own experiences, and we all have something to learn from you. So as you're listening, please do ask questions about what makes sense to you, what perhaps hasn't worked in your experience, what we can learn from you. How are you making a difference in your communities? And how can we activate or perhaps accelerate the change that we're making? And what was the catalyst for action in your own experiences? So please think about these things. Send in your questions to Matthew, and we'll also take some from Twitter as well. Full disclosure, I haven't worked in this world, the CED world, for about a year. I used to work with CCEDNet Manitoba, so I'm not up to date with the jargon, but apparently social enterprise is still a thing. Is that still a thing? Clearly qualified to moderate this conversation. So I want to start with some personal stories from our panelists, because often when we talk about this kind of thing, it's a lot of jargon, right? A lot of process. But at the heart of it, we're all people trying to help people. We're trying to empower people and communities. So I want to start with Wayne. Wayne, you are kind of the epitome of a successful story of an immigrant, but you grew up in very different circumstances in Hong Kong. Tell me about what your reality was when you were growing up in Hong Kong.
Qu'est-ce qui se passait à Hong Kong?
Is it on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was.
Je suis
Can everyone
née à
hear?
Hong Kong.
Sorry.
Est-ce que tout le monde peut vous entendre?
Can we get the volume up?
Ok, parlez un peu plus fort, s'il vous plaît.
It's okay.
Oui, c'est d'accord. Oui, c'est bien.
Yeah, when I was young, I grew up in Hong Kong.
Alors, j'ai grandi à Hong Kong.
Poor family.
J'étais une
We
famille
were
très
poor. We were
pauvre.
living at Gecko. We went to elementary school and middle school in Hong Kong.
Et je suis allée aussi
And,
dans l'école
when I was young,
secondaire
I just remember the
c'est
same story I told in Ottawa with some
la même
MP
histoire que
anyway.
j'ai racontée
When I was
à
young, I was helped
j'étais
by, someday my hot lunches being served by some volunteers, and then through the end I found those volunteers mainly from a United Church of Canada, and they served hot meals in school. So at that time inspired me about how lucky I was able to a hot meal during lunch, and on the same time I grew up with some value system instilled into my mind about what am I supposed to do in the future if I'm able to make it in certain status.
De mon avenir. Et maintenant, vous voilà maintenant, des années plus tard.
Doing remarkably well. But you also founded with your wife Eleanor the Trico Charitable Foundation in 2008.
Avec votre femme en 2008
what I was really compelled by when we were talking yesterday is the work that you're doing with the First Nations communities. Can you give us the context, the history of how that came about and some of the work that you're doing with them?
If anybody live in Calgary probably remember 2013 about the major flood in southern Alberta. The flood not just impacting Calgary, impacting High River and a lot of surrounding First Nation as well. The nation that we were involved is by the name of Trinity Nation in Morley. At that time, they have over 200 houses being flooded. The government sent them a contractor to help them to fix up their housing. But again, the schedule delay, the quality of work, the chief or some of the nation members really disappointed and wasn't really happy about it. We had the opportunity being introduced to the nation and introduced to the chief. They find ourselves out from Calgary, basically with our value and the culture of our company. They approached us to see if we are interested to get involved with them. At that time, they still have 160 houses outstanding, which is roughly about, I would say, about 2 years ago. So the mandate is we have to finish the rest of the houses, 160 homes, within a 15 months period. At that time, we were thinking about what are we as a company, besides building houses, are we able to put a philosophy, which I always have, for a business? How are we as a business able to doing well and doing good? So we thought that no hesitation, we took on this project and the mandate, we give it to our team at that time, make sure that we have to imply the same value system we have in Calgary. That means we have to make sure that the people involved or the customer receive our service have to have what we call is a customer experience, a good customer experience. On the same time, make sure that we have a really simple word for our team is whatever good for the nation member is good for us. Lastly, we make sure that we have to teach what we know to the First Nation member. That means we hire as many Nation members as possible to do the job there. So this become a system, what I call it, we're able to engage the First Nation people with us.
Affinity Credit Union in Saskatoon. You're the community development manager there, but you've worked in government and the non-profit sector and housing as well. Before you kind of give the context of the work you do currently, there was a moment that we were talking about just before that kind of really allowed you to witness a reality that was different than yours and kind of catapulted you into the work that you do. Can you tell us about what the context of that moment?
Yeah, sure. It was my experience doing nonprofit housing, specifically on the rental side, and I come from what I would categorize as a privileged background. Even though I'm a person of color, I had certain things in my life that guaranteed my success almost, and so participating, engaging with community economic development, and specifically affordable housing, and some of the challenges that community members face. There was one moment that sort of crystallized the understanding of people's positions, and that juxtaposition is when trying to work with people to secure housing, there are specific challenges that come up, and realizing that specifically with this situation I was in, a single mother, had 2 children, and one thing we had to do is sort of work with her to be able to address some of the issues, and one of them was a health issue in regards to addiction to drugs, and it didn't work out. It was a hard situation for me to be in, because you want to root for that person and support them, but also realizing you don't necessarily have the capacity and ability to engage with them, and so we had to go through the hard process of asking them to leave.
You had to ask them to leave, even though she was a single mother,
and
low income.
It was probably the toughest thing I've ever had to do, because we were thinking of the other people in the community that were living in those buildings. And there was some major issues that she was bringing into the community, and it just opened my eyes to looking at a bigger picture, understanding some of those larger causes and roots of poverty, and it very much influenced how I move forward. And it was a humbling experience, realizing that I don't have all the answers, and sometimes the community doesn't have those answers at the time. But how do we get to those specific places to address those issues?
Tell me about the work you're doing now. And can everyone hear? Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah, tell me about the work.
I'll try and project a bit better. So the work that I'm doing now, I like to call it my dream job. I'm working with a financial institution that matches my values and working in regards to communities. Before I was asking for money and now I'm giving it away, so everybody sort of loves it.
We should hang out. Let's be friends.
So it's you make quick friends with the community, but you also do some great work with organizations. So we do grant funding for a number of initiatives across Saskatchewan, but we also do social financing when it comes to community loans, so working with nonprofit organizations to do good work. And for those organizations that don't usually qualify for traditional financing, we're willing to work alongside them to take that risk together and work towards creating a great outcome. But we also do microloans for small business startups from marginalized populations to start their own businesses. And I'm always open to new ideas. We work with social enterprises to bring about the first solar co-op in Saskatchewan. It's been great to be working in those conditions.
You said working in your job is like working with magic.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Just trying, for me, I don't have a financial background, so being able to understand the lending practices and what money really is.
What is money? Do tell.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten there yet. I know how to use it, I just don't know what it is. But looking at those underlying elements of how our communities and society and economic conditions come about because of this particular piece of technology.
Well, you said, you call money technology.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
It really is a technique to address or trying to find out the value of something, right? And even trying to understand the core meaning of credit. Like the core Latin meaning to it is belief, right? And so credit is belief. What does that mean? How does that relate to the work that we're doing?
Yeah.
And sometimes the things are right in front of you that you don't really realize. And coming from a credit union, what does that really mean, right? In regards to union bringing two or more people together. And so credit union, the belief in the larger community. And that's what we do, right? And so it's been an eye-opening experience to come from a more social community background to be engaged on a larger sort of platform has been amazing.
Excellent, thank you. Beatrice, I want to ask you about your work, because when we were talking just now, you felt a little like, I don't know if I belong in this panel because everyone works with communities, but actually the work that your organization does, I think, really speaks to why we're here. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Oh yeah, this is the part where we put this in.
Oui, moi j'arrive du Québec, du Chantier d'économie sociale. Le travail que le chantier fait, le chantier c'est un peu un lieu de concertation, donc un lieu d'échange entre, il y a pas mal l'économie sociale est présente beaucoup au Québec. On a des réseaux, que ce soit des garderies, d'entreprises d'insertion, le logement communautaire, mais aussi la réalité des entreprises d'économie sociale en Gaspésie plutôt qu'en Abitibi, plutôt qu'à Montréal est très différente. Et donc le chantier est un peu un espace d'échange entre ces réseaux, ces communautés-là, pour dire quels sont leurs enjeux, que ce soit l'entrepreneuriat des jeunes, que ce soit le développement...
Beatrice, sorry, can I ask you to pause? I think, are we having some problems with translation? Yeah. Okay. So the translator is just going to figure that out. I just don't want to miss on anything that you're saying. Yeah? Good to go? Okay. I don't know who you are or where you are, but thank you. Okay, go ahead. No, it's all good.
Donc, au Québec, on a des réseaux d'entreprises d'économie sociale dans plein de secteurs. En fait, on dit que l'économie sociale, c'est une façon d'entreprendre, c'est pas un secteur de l'économie. Donc, on a des entreprises d'insertion, des entreprises d'aide à domicile, des coops de travail, dans plein de secteurs. On a aussi des réseaux dans tous les territoires. Donc, la réalité à Montréal de ce que vivent les communautés, ce dont elles ont besoin, ce à quoi elles aspirent, est très différente de la réalité en Abitibi.
Okay, sorry, Beatrice. I'm so sorry. There's still... I apologize. Can we figure out a way to do this? I'm so sorry. He can't hear you. Maybe. Can she do it in English? Okay. This poor guy. Do it in English or French? What are we doing?
I'll go in English until we get a...
Yeah, continue.
Sorry, this is where the mask falls off. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I apologize. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the Chantier is a space to share best practices and issues between different sectors where the social economy is present, whether that's service to people like daycare or home care, whether that's manufacturing or numerical, whether that's the forest industry, the fishing industry, reality in urban environments. So different territories and different communities have different issues, different sectors face different issues, but together there are broader issues that we have in the social economy or opportunities. And the Chantier is a space where all of these networks come together and say, we have an issue with financing at the beginning. It's really difficult to get a loan when you're a collective enterprise and your objective is not to maximize profit. That doesn't mean you're not economically viable, but your objective isn't to maximize profit, and we're having a hard time explaining that and getting a loan. Okay, so we all together as a movement create a fund specifically for social economy that can leverage further financing. And that fund that was created in '97 was there and able to demonstrate that investing in social economy is a viable and actually a profitable business. The same way we see that, for example, purchasing, government procurement is an important leverage to sustain these enterprises, and it's also in the interest of local governments, but sometimes there's issues with explaining to local government how they do that or making the social economy able to answer procurement things, either in capacity or technical questions. So how can we support that process? Or looking at public policy. In 2013, there was a framework legislation adopted in Quebec, which means that now we have a leverage to tell government that in their policies, economic development, cultural development, social policies, etc., they need to have equitable treatment for social economy enterprises that are on the terrain, meaning that the support that they give to small and medium businesses anyways should be adapted to reality of these enterprises, which sometimes they're not, or take into account the broader impact that they have. And so we're really a space, as I said, of exchange to either develop common tools or public policies that'll serve all of us, and also to see what's coming up. So issues like numerical issues and platform co-ops, or new ways, or that have been developed in one territory to a new form of social economy enterprise or whatever, to share those best practices and adapt them to other realities.
And I think why it's so important to have you up here on this stage, like you describe your organization as a network of networks. And we're in a room full of people who are working in their own various fields, and to have that impact, that ability to come together, I think, is something that you're very familiar with in coordinating. Take us back to when you first graduated. You did politics and economics, and you were ready to change the world, but you had an experience where it kind of gave you a different insight. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was just telling Nadia, when I finished my undergraduate degree, I studied in economics and political science because I had an interest in the broader context, and I thought things aren't working well. And so I did a 3-year degree, and then I was like, okay, got it, figured it out. And,
all done.
And then I went for 3 months in indigenous communities in Chiapas in Mexico. And I got there and I was like, okay, I know this. Monoculture, come on, like page 2 of the economic development book says this is not what you're supposed to do, so I'm gonna... And after 3 months, it was just, I know nothing. I have no concrete skills to help. I'm not an agricultural engineer. I'm not a human rights lawyer. I can't even speak to most of the women because they don't speak Spanish. They speak, and they're not going to go to school to learn the Spanish. And so it really was a jarring realization of, first of all, and also who am I as a privileged white northern person to come in and tell anyone in this community what to do. And what I was saying to Nadia is I think it was very jarring in that community, in that reality, but I think that's true everywhere. We just sometimes don't think that way. And so how is it that from Montreal, why in Montreal should we be speaking to the reality in Abitibi or in Gaspésie or even in Centre du Québec? What we need to be doing is speaking of the things that have worked for us and our needs, and seeing if other people have similar needs or have similar challenges, and say, well, here's how we fixed it, or what solution we have. And then, oh, that's interesting, we might want to learn from that. So I think it's all about sharing best practices and then enabling communities to adapt them to their own reality rather than figuring out the solution to things. And also in terms of moral legitimacy, I think. I don't think anyone has the legitimacy to bring the solution to someone else. I think the only way that we're going to get out of this is to help, to empower communities to find their own solutions.
Thank you. Diane, you're a chartered accountant, and accountants like rules. So what are you doing in this business? Tell me about the Shorefast Foundation and how you got involved in this, because it wasn't part of the plan.
No, it wasn't part of the plan. So I'm based in Ottawa, but I was talking to Nadia yesterday just about a bit of my background. I am a chartered accountant, and I spent 13 years in public practice. And in that, I had a lot of pure for-profit clients. I had nonprofit clients. I had entrepreneurial clients. But what I found is there was such a stark difference between the work I was doing with the for-profit and the nonprofit. And I really struggled that personally. I'd leave a meeting at the nonprofit, which was about rate of return and tax minimization and an aggressive growth strategy. And then I'd go to a nonprofit board meeting, and they had a great set of value system, great plans, but they didn't have the financial background or context to keep the program running. And I really struggled with that gap. And I started to think, well, what is the space in between, and why does there have to be such a gap? And at that time, I was working at the firm, the founder of the project on Fogo Island. Her name is Zita Cobb. I had worked with Zita in a personal sense, and I got to know a bit more about the project, and I became the external auditor. So I flew out, looked at the books, did the financial review. But in that process of flying out there and meeting the people, being sort of absorbed into the community, this is where I found that I could have a home in my professional life that found the balance between those two places. So that's how I came to this project, is around how I can bring my professional background and experience in accounting and finance and invest that directly into the local community. So just about the Shorefast Foundation, it's a charitable foundation based on Fogo Island, Newfoundland. So Fogo Island is an island off of the island of Newfoundland, north of Gander, for people that know the area. Is there any Newfoundlanders here? Raise your hands.
Yes.
Yes.
Raise the roof.
Okay. So the whole project was started, the founder was Zita Cobb. She was the CFO of JDS Uniphase, did very well young in her career, retired, and wanted to come home to try to find some solutions. One of the challenge in Newfoundland is the fallout of the fishing economy in the early 90s. It was the stronghold for the entire province, and with the cod moratorium that came in, it really wiped out the stronghold in many, many communities very, very quickly.
And she had a personal experience of seeing that.
Yeah, so Zita, her father was a fisherman. She was an 8th generation Fogo Islander, and one day he came home and he threw the one fish that he could catch on the ground, and he said, "I'm done, it's over." And he burned his boat and they left. So Zita left Fogo Island, came to Ottawa for school, and studied business to figure out what went wrong. And her father said to her, "It was not the fish that let us down." And that carried with her, and that's why she studied business, to try to figure out, well, what was it? What did go wrong? The fish tried to reproduce earlier, and there was all these natural things that happened to try to keep up, but the cod could not keep up with what we were taking out of the ocean at the time. So that brought her back home. She started the foundation to try to look at what can be done there. And the whole project is around trying to build a secondary leg to the fishing economy. So Shorefast is invested in a number of niches around geotourism. And geotourism came out of an investigation through asset-based community development. I'm not sure if people have used that practice. But what they did on Fogo Island was gathered the community and had a lot of kitchen table discussions and asked the questions: what do we know? What do we love? What do we miss? And what are we willing to work hard for to bring back? What do we not want to lose? And people that have been to Newfoundland, you know that Newfoundlanders are predisposed to hospitality. And so the geotourism strategy came out of that, and the creation of the Fogo Island Inn. So that was the first social enterprise business that was created. The charity also has a number of other initiatives around cultural development on the island. We have an arts-based contemporary residency program. And the intent of that was to bring contemporary art to a very remote place And if anyone follows contemporary art, it's a completely different way of approaching an ideology. It challenges. And so bringing in an artistic arm as we approach a new model for social and economic development was really critical to have that viewpoint of artistic practice on site. So we have artists that come embed themselves in the community.
There's something really interesting that you told me about yesterday, and Fred kind of mentioned how money is a tool. Tell me about the economic nutrition label that you're working on.
Yeah, so one of the things that we had talked about a lot about was really understanding how, and in a different approach to business. And one was understanding money. So one of the things that we tried to do is we picked an object and we said, we're going to try to figure out where the money goes. So I bought, I forget what it was that we used. And we tried to trace it all the way through. Where did that money eventually end? How did it impact the community? And we looked, both Zita and I had a financial background, and so we had looked at, from prospectus to who owns this and the percentage of this, of a conglomerate, of a partnership. And it was nearly impossible to really trace it through. And so out of that, we started thinking, what can we do? So to foster this, we've created, it's called an economic nutrition label. So everyone is familiar now with food nutrition labels, and there was a big upheaval saying we can't do this, we can't identify all of the ingredients that are in here, it's going to be too complex. But now, every piece of food that you buy, you can look at the label and it tells you the percentages of its health value and whether it's good for you. And you have the choice to read it or not. We're doing the same thing. So every product or service that you buy from us, we have an economic nutrition label. And it identifies where all the money goes. So for everything you buy, we identify what percentage is spent for labor, overhead, direct materials, and a portion is allocated back to fund our charitable programs. And at the bottom of the label, it shows geographically where the money stays. And we think that's a really important factor of trying to connect back business as a tool to place. And the placelessness of capital, I can do a whole presentation on that later. That is really something that a business needs to grasp and understand, and where the money goes and how it can quickly leave your community. And that's, I think this room is very familiar with that concept, buy local, support local. The economic nutrition label is a tool to have a very clear communication with the buyer of how local buying can have a direct impact in the community.
Thank you. I love that idea. No excuses now for those of us who are too lazy to Google our way through that. You are all doing very important work in your own fields, but we are living in a challenging time, increasingly polarized politically. Climate change, we're seeing the ramifications of that here in Canada and, of course, in America. Engaging marginalized communities or disengaged communities, minorities, and also, as we heard yesterday, the real chance for reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. In each of your fields, what is the biggest challenge that you're dealing with, and how are you overcoming that? Whoever wants to go first. Wayne.
My experience about the First Nation Indigenous people, I always believe, how are we in business able to use the power of money to look at the holistic change for this the community they work at, the Trinity Nation. It's not just like giving them job, not just like help them to make money. So we are looking into this economic diversification. How are we going to help this nation, not just on housing? So right now we are looking at opening up a very much like focal island. We are trying to focus up this travel destination. There's a new destination opening up in Calgary called Trinity, the Trinity Cultural Center. It's on your way to Banff. You're able to experience the food, indigenous food. You're able to experience the cultural experience, like the elders would share their story. There's a cultural walk on the same time. They have a cultural dance and songs and a museum going to be there to attract the tourists to go there. We employed all the people from the nation. This has become what I call so-called a social enterprise, is using the business to help them to do the social change. On the same time, we talk about the the First Nation people, they are very focused on what is God given to them, what is the nature given to them. So basically, the challenge is how are we able to use what they really want and really wish for to change it into economic development. So right now, we are trying to work with them together to create what I call is a solar farm. The solar farm is one of the biggest in Canada. It's roughly around 40 megawatt, which is going to help to energy roughly about 20,000 households. With this in mind, it's very much like the elders and the chief said that we really respect nature. We really want to be part of the solution, not going to be part of the problem. How are we able to use something that God given to us? That's exactly what the chief said. So we brainstormed, we came up with this idea. There's one location inside the nation able to locate this 40 megawatts of solar power. So, I like to encourage if anybody here is from the business background to look at this, using your business to create a social change. And on the same time, facing the challenge, how are we able to, my wife is here, so I hate to talk about Donald Trump.
Where's Eleanor? Is she here? She's left the room now. We have to create our own force, really, to counter how are we able to be lend our responsibility into making that climate change as our mission to be part of the solution on it. So I would say that we doing a small part as business to help one of the tiny nations in Canada lend them using a business to lend them a solution to make the holistic change in the community. We actually got a question, and I think you answered it, was what other than doing good does Trico Foundation have on the plan in the near future? And it seems like with the solar farms and the cultural centre that you're starting, that you really are kind of branching out, so thank you. Who would like to go next? What's the biggest challenge you're facing, and how are you overcoming that?
You ready to?
Yeah.
I'll go.
Beatrice.
Am I still in English or am I trying French? Still in English.
Okay.
It's an interesting question because I think it can be answered very differently if you're looking at it from a place-based perspective. Like that community can decide that what their issue is retaining young people or ensuring local services, or as a Quebec-wide, again, network, we look at it a little bit differently. My first answer was like, I don't see challenges, I see opportunities. So, for example, the increase in inequality, which is, as a society, a huge challenge, I think is really an opportunity for social economy organizations to show the impact that they have. That yes, we're not only creating jobs, but jobs that are much, with more decent work, with more equal redistribution of profits, with a variety of social impact, that we're fostering social cohesion through our economic development. And that's an opportunity because I think governments, local government, provincial governments and federal governments are looking for solutions to do more with less. And so faced with those challenges, it's really an opportunity to structure and focus more support on these organizations. But it's true that there are, I think, specific issues. One of them is more of a good thing, like the federal government that suddenly is more progressive and open towards doing things. But how do we have a constructive discussion with this government that's going to bring concrete impact into communities and respect what the ecosystem that's already there and support it? I think that's a big issue that's on our plate. The other one is the numerical trends that we're seeing. So the Airbnb, Uberization of work, platform co-ops. En français, in the middle of my sentence? Okay.
Okay then.
Bon, everyone if they're ready?
En français, in about 30 seconds. Yeah,
bon. Fait que l'ubérisation de l'économie, l'intelligence artificielle, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire en termes des conditions de travail, puis quelles sont les solutions ancrées dans les communautés qui peuvent répondre à ça, faire face à ça. Donc, comment, d'une part, faire valoir les solutions qui existent et d'autre part, créer des conditions pour appuyer le développement d'initiatives, que ce soit des plateformes coop, que ce soit le maillage avec les logiciels libres, puis une série d'autres questions pour faire face à ces nouvelles tendances qui arrivent dans nos communautés.
Thank you. Very quickly, Fred or Diane, biggest challenge you're facing and how you're overcoming?
I'd say one of the challenges that I personally have in the project is getting people to think of business a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And I would say getting people to understand that business is a tool. It is a resource. It is not a predefined construct of how you need to grow things. So a lot of that is conversation not only with our community partners, but that's one of the things that we do when we speak broadly, is really, we would like to see all businesses as not just for profits. So regardless of what you're in, what your actual legal structure is, buying local, supporting local, making good purchasing decisions, paying fair wages, investing in your community, being not focused on pure profit and growth at an unrealistic, achievable rate, looking at the 100-year horizon in every decision, thinking of things holistically, thinking of your sub-cell and how that connects out to the greater world, so your community, the country, and a whole. That's really hard. It takes more time, it takes more patience, and it takes a broad perspective, so decisions can't be made as quickly, you can't be as decisive, and you don't feel as productive. Those are they go against what you are taught in business school, mm-hmm. and what is considered good business practice. So that is an entire framework change of how you operate a business. So I'd say that's something that we as an organization are really interested in promoting. Our economic nutrition label is one way that we're hoping it's a way of reframing the numbers. Accounting is just another communications language. Financial statements are another communication point. It's numbers, not letters, but that's it. And we can reframe these tools and use them as tools to open up a different dialogue, share different information, and share perspective.
Thank you. Fred, you have two problems right here to do with credit unions. We're not going to be able to do them specifically, but whoever asks these questions, please come up to Fred and ask them. But I want to hear from your perspective what challenge you're facing and how you overcome.
I'll try and be as specific as possible for us as a credit union, especially when it comes to engaging with community, is discerning the symptoms versus the core causes of problems. And because we're engaging both by providing funding, but also our resources and our time and our staff, is what to be engaged in and what the community is really telling us. So one of the things that we're learning, especially when it comes to truth and reconciliation, is that we need to be educated in a big way, in a big picture way, but also in a specific, when it comes to understanding cultural differences when it comes to time, right? From a financial institution, we think in quarters. But when it comes to indigenous culture, it's 5-6 generations. And how do you engage with that and bridge that gap? And for us, it's been a learning process, but it's also a slow process, and being able to understand how to properly create those relationships and partnerships. So that's one big challenge for us, is being able to understand those core situations.
Thank you. Finally, I want to ask each of you, this is the opening plenary. We have the rest of the conference to go. If there was one piece of advice or wisdom you would give to our audience as they head off into all their workshops, bearing in mind that we are about engaging communities or engaging grassroots to build thriving communities, what would that piece of advice be to each other? Or one takeaway? What would you encourage people to do?
So for me, as I learn more through Truth and Reconciliation, it's realizing, looking beyond the now and looking at building a legacy for people to build on top. So I'm a big believer in governance and creating spaces for these ideas to come forth, and to be I'm a day-to-day guy, right? So be as specific as possible in regards to what those core problems are, and allowing the community to speak into it and create those spaces. And so that's something we're really involved in creating that space.
Thank you. What would you encourage us to do as we go forward? Beatrice?
I just want to renchérir sur cette idée-là, désolé, mettez vos casques, de l'importance de l'intelligence collective. Puis je pense que ces genres de rencontres, à l'échelle nationale ou à l'échelle locale, c'est ce qui construit des solutions qui sont adaptées à nos besoins. Donc quand on peut arriver en disant, voici mon enjeu, mon besoin, puis en même temps, voici ce que je sais qui a bien fonctionné chez nous, c'est ça qui permet des échanges constructifs puis de monter les bateaux collectif plutôt qu'un bateau, un enjeu seul.
Thank you. Very quickly, Wayne or Diane, what do you encourage people to do?
I would say try to be as specific as possible to your locale. Make sure there's an open dialogue with what your community is really good at, what its history is, what its geography is, and try to invest as best in the natural assets that are there, and take the time to work through those details. And from there, you're going to have something unique and that's specific to your geographic area, which will just serve you in the long run. Trying to replicate other locations, there's definitely good models to have as a consideration, but try to stay as focused on the specific things that engage not only yourself and your own passions, but those that you're working with in the community, and that will foster and help grow things with a long-term vision, what will be there for generations to come. That was touched on. And I think that's one of the best paths in order of creating a sense of permanence, that this is not a short-term fix. The other thing I would say is if it's hard and it feels really hard in your decision, you're on the right path. Don't give up. If it happened too quickly and you didn't want to get a few gray hairs or, get a little frustrated, it probably you left someone out. So that was a personal big challenge coming in an environment of quick decision making, but if it sometimes feels hard, you're probably on the right path. But don't lose hope. Just continue in that collaborative mode, and something new will come of it.
Thanks, Diane. Wayne, you get the last word. You've been through challenges and you've overcome lots. What would you encourage our audience?
It sounds like I'm using a way different language than the rest of you. But I have to say that I'm a firm believer in social enterprise myself. On the same time, I would encourage all of you to have an open mind, seriously, have an open mind. This open mind to look at money is not dirty, business is not dirty. Business is a way, I always said that we have to doing well and doing good. A business is there. If you're a grassroots, you should know a lot of business guys. Go and talk to them. What is your responsibility to the civil society? How are you able to use what you make to be able to impact the social society? I believe that this has to be a grassroots movement to encourage the business guy to do good. It's very general, but I believe we are businessmen. We make money from the community. We are there to help out. So don't be shy to talk to them. Don't be shy. Not that many people would be can give all the money that they make, but they do have certain passion they're going to support. So I encourage you to use the mindset of economic development, to use the mindset of social enterprise to do the social change. Thank you.
I would like to say a big thank you to Wayne, Fred, Beatrice, and Diane. Thank you so much. We should hang out more often, I feel, on this stage and talk social enterprise. Thank you. Round of applause, please.